Howdy, Immortalium here, and today I'm going to be reviewing Tropic of the Sea by Satoshi Kon. Just before I actually start reviewing this, I just simply want to say I'm a big fan of Satoshi Kon. I've seen Millennium Actress, I've seen Tokyo Godfathers, which I really love. I've seen Paprika, and actually just recently I saw Paranoia Agent. I've yet to see Perfect Blue. I've been meaning to for a while now. The Blu-ray is actually pretty cheap now, but I just haven't gotten around to it. But anyway, I'm a big fan of Satoshi Kon, and his loss back in 2010 was just devastating on the industry. Such a talented man, just the loss was immense. But let's not focus on his end. Let's kind of focus a bit on his beginning, because this is actually his debut manga, or his debut serialized manga, I should be more specific, because he'd done a couple of one-shots beforehand. He also worked as an assistant to Katsuhiro Otomo. I know he definitely worked on Domu, sorry. I believe he worked on Akira with him, but I can't be 100% sure on that. But he'd definitely been an assistant to Katsuhiro Otomo. Basically, this was his first serialized work, so basically his debut manga. Let's start off with the story. So, what is Tropic of the Sea about? Basically, our lead character is Yosuke, and he lives in the village, or town, I should say, of Ade. And basically, there's this kind of a tradition, basically, of his household, who are traditionally Shinto priests. They have, for many generations, been the kind of guardians of the mermaid's egg. Basically, as the tradition goes, every 60 years, they will return an egg back to the sea, and the mermaids will give them a brand new egg to take care of. And then on the anniversary of when they got that egg, the 60th anniversary, they will return that egg to the sea. And that's how it's gone for like many generations. I think they say something about maybe like 20 generations. But now, Yosuke's father is beginning to go on the more developmental side in terms of like the city and, you know, in regards to his duty to the egg. So, for example, he wants to make the egg kind of more of a showpiece, kind of to bring in tourism. He wants to kind of bring more development to the city to prevent the loss of the youths who are migrating to larger cities and not returning. A lot of the people have issues with the way that he's treating, you know, the island where traditionally the egg is brought to in order to be returned. And his father, the grandfather of Yosuke, is absolutely abhorred. He, you know, that young man is essentially turning that sacred egg into an attraction. So that's kind of how it begins. Now, over the course of the story, we find out that the egg is a bit more than, you know, a tourist attraction. It's, in many ways, it has this supernatural properties. And we start, like, the very strong theme of this manga is that we should not disregard tradition so lightheartedly. Simply because it seems a bit strange or unusual, doesn't mean that we should cast off tradition. We should kind of re-examine it and see its purpose and whether or not we should keep it. That's kind of how I interpreted the theme. I've heard of some other people thinking that it simply means to keep tradition, which people have had issues with. But I've particularly, there's this one scene in the manga where until that point, I was completely unsympathetic to the father of Yosuke, who essentially is, you know, going against all of the townspeople in an attempt to bring development to the city. It's a relatively, you know, like, quick piece of dialogue. It's something that a lot of people might have missed, and I'm sure they have missed, but we kind of get his insight as to why he wants to develop the city, and it's kind of a sad insight. It really, like, makes me understand why he's so desperate to develop the city. Because of that, I became a lot more sympathetic to him, and I kind of understand why he wanted to kind of throw off the past and bring in this kind of new era of development. From that perspective, I do think it's a case of re-examination of tradition rather than, like, simply keeping tradition. I think that's kind of the overall theme of the manga. Now, in terms of characters, the characters aren't too special overall. As I said, you know, there's some nice little insights that kind of lend a bit more three-dimensionality to these kind of people who you would kind of, at first glance, think that they're a bit, you know, on the two-dimensional side. Our lead character, Yosuke, he's at first kind of opposed to the tradition. He kind of still has this kind of a slight belief due to his mother being a firm believer, but in general, he's kind of opposed to the previous beliefs and traditions, and kind of wants to become part of this kind of new development age. But he kind of learns that, you know, everything isn't as it appears and that he shouldn't be so quick to throw off tradition. Like, he himself is a, you know, pretty good protagonist. You know, he goes through his troubles, he kind of learns from his mistakes, etc, etc. But he wasn't, you know, too engaging a lead character. He's kind of there simply to push the theme on. So, you know, overall, decent character, nothing too exceptional though. He has a couple of friends, in particular this girl called Nami. Nami is she's returned to the city of Ade from the main cities. Basically, she's returned just to simply, you know, say hi to everyone. But she's one of those people that the father of Yosuke kind of wanted to keep at Ade. You know, like, she's moved away from Ade, and even though she's returning for a little while, she's going to be going back to the main city. So essentially, she's kind of lost to the town of Ade. And she's, you know, a decent enough character. She definitely gets the point across of, you know, the loss of youth in that city, that people are leaving and not returning. But I don't think she's particularly deep. She's kind of there simply to get that theme across. So I think she could have been a little better developed. If I had to give my kind of opinions overall on the, you know, story and the characters, I think the story's stronger overall. This is a story piece dealing with the themes of, you know, like, re-examining tradition, how we should face, you know, development in this kind of strange age where everything is becoming far, far more developed and old traditions are being cast off as if they never have any importance whatsoever. So it's a very interesting work from that story and thematical point of view, but the characters are kind of there to serve that purpose more so than anything else. Now, that's not to say they're bad characters, just kind of that they are subservient to the story. That's my personal opinion on it. So overall, from a story perspective, I enjoyed it. Characters-wise, not so much. Artistically, this is where it's particularly interesting. As a big fan of his movies, I'm far, far more used to his kind of more developed style. He was a mangaka for quite a while before he did his debut movie. So by that point, he had actually developed his own distinct art style. But having this being his debut serialized work and having just come off of working with Katsuhiro Otomo, you can really, really heavily see the Katsuhiro Otomo influence on him. So if I can get you a decent example, like these characters here, I feel almost as if they have been pulled off from the pages of, say, Akira Domo or Domu, sorry, I keep calling it Domu, or any of the other, like, Katsuhiro Otomo works. Now, proportionally, they're kind of more correct, and you can definitely see that there is, like, a different style that, particularly near the end of the manga, actually, I noticed there were some, like, differences of proportion, which is like leading to the more distinct art style that he would develop in his movies. But overall, it's it feels almost as if, you know, Katsuhiro Otomo was working on this. Like, this could have, like, many people would probably look at this and think, oh, it's a Katsuhiro Otomo piece. But still, it's a very pleasant art style. You know, the characters look very nice overall. The backgrounds are pretty nicely detailed. The paneling is on the simple side, but considering it's his debut work, you know, I'll give that a pass. You know, the paneling is generally distinct enough that, you know, it has a nice flow and pace to it. Not overly dynamic, but that's fine. So overall, as an artistic piece, you know, nothing too special in comparison to his later works, but it's very, very interesting to me to simply see how he developed from this, what is actually, I realize, a very heavily influenced by Katsuhiro Otomo style, basically working away from, you know, when he had worked with Katsuhiro Otomo into his more distinct art style. So it's a very interesting development piece, I should say. So artistically, it definitely gets a pass for me. It's a very nice looking manga. This was released by Vertical Ink, and basically, it's not overly a special piece. You know, first of all, I should say about the cover, there's kind of a nice feel to it. It's kind of a glossy egg, but then like a kind of not quite a matte finish, but you know, kind of similar-ish to it. So overall, the cover is pretty nice. Plus, it has a pretty nice look. Although I must say that the lead character, which I assume is Yosuke on this cover, looks a little different from his like incarnation inside. He looks a bit more kind of anime standard. So, you know, I would have liked a bit more of a closer art style to what is present inside the manga, but whatever. Trim size wise, in comparison to what is a normal tankobon, for example, Yotsuba, we can see that it's about the same trim size, but actually significantly wider, which is quite interesting. It is a little more kind of free to breathe, I should say, art style. It's quite nice, it's not cramped at all. it is, you know, pretty decent. Although I would have probably preferred overall to have a bigger trim size, like some, for example, Dark Horse's treatment of Opus. But you know, not bad trim size. No color pages at all, although I didn't actually see any pages that were monochromed. I believe the entire manga was literally just black and white, so, you know, no color pages whatsoever. Something that's kind of confused me a little bit is that there were no chapter title pages, no chapters I should say either, but at the back, for some reason they have selected title pages, which is a little strange, so like these things, which I assume would have been the chapter title pages. Not exactly sure why they put that at the back, and not sure why they have selected ones either. Like, it's not the entire thing. Like, they skip, for example, you know, the 7th title page. So I'm a little confused on that. But it is nice that they're not completely excluded. But the most interesting kind of feature of this release is the afterword by Satoshi Kon. Basically, this was written for the 1999 edition of Tropic of the Sea in Japan, and which would have been about 9 years after the serialization of this. So he's kind of looking back at this manga and kind of talking about how it influenced him, what kind of impact it had on his storytelling, on his art style, etc., etc. And overall, it was a really, really interesting piece. You know, it's about 5 pages long, so it's a nice chunky afterword. So I found that really, really interesting to read. So I would definitely class that as the best kind of extra in this. So yeah, for that alone, like, that is a very, very interesting extra for a Satoshi Kon fan. So overall, Tropic of the Sea, what are my thoughts on it? It's a good work. Personally, I prefer all of the films and TV series I've seen from Satoshi Kon over this, but as a Satoshi Kon fan, it was fascinating to see kind of how he began, how his art style developed, how his storytelling developed, etc., etc. And it is a very thoughtful manga, I will say. It really did make me think a lot about, you know, modern society's stance on tradition and how easy it is to cast them off without thinking why they are there. So overall, it's a very interesting work. I would recommend this, particularly to Satoshi Kon fans. If you're a big fan of his movies or of Paranoia Agent, this is definitely well worth a read. So yeah, those are my overall opinions on Tropic of the Sea. If you've read this manga, definitely share in the comments below your opinions on it. I would love to hear that. And how you think it's influenced his later works. Because I would love to hear that and be able to discuss that. So thanks for watching. Don't forget to comment, rate, subscribe, and bye-bye.